So here it is. Earlier this week on Valentine's Day, the long-anticipated original Tomb Raider series gets a refresh. We only had to wait, 28 years? Wow. Better late than never, right? Okay, so I purchased this game on Steam this morning, and I've spent the last few hours tinkering around and getting to re-know this game, and to be honest, I'm having a bunch of mixed feelings. I'll get to this a little later, but what I wanted to do today is just give you my pros and cons regarding this refresh. Before I begin, I wanted to dive into the history of this game and, more specifically, my history when it comes to this game and video games in general. I've mentioned this before, but for those of you who are new to my channel, I've been playing games for a very long time. Yes, I'm old. How old? Well, my very first video game console I received as a kid was Intellivision. Yeah, I think it was the early 80s when this came out, but it was a funny looking console that had a controller that more resembled a telephone keypad than anything you'd play games with. The competing video game console at that time was Atari. In the mid-80s, the two competing brands were Nintendo and Sega. I owned a Sega. I believe it was called the Sega Master System. Again, they were all cartridge-style games that were very basic and crude. In the late 80s, I moved up the ladder a little and purchased the Sega Genesis. But by the early 90s, I took a break from playing video games. I was off to college, moving out on my own, and video games kind of took a back seat to everything else going on at the time. In late 1996, I got a call from my best friend about a job opportunity in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Yeah, I'm Canadian, born and raised. I only moved to the US when I met my wife, which is an entirely different story, but anyway, I ended up rooming with my best friend in Fort Mac, and I remember vividly one afternoon he arrived home carrying some shopping bags. He was all giddy and excited that he had just bought a video game. I asked him what it was, and he replied, "It's a Sony PlayStation." I paused for a moment and thought, Sony? Don't they just make TVs and cameras? He pulled this thing out, and I was like, wow. Controllers were completely different than what I was used to, and the games were on CD. You have to remember, CDs were kind of a new thing in the early 90s. So to have a video game console utilize CDs for games? Well, this was just NASA next-level space technology. Certainly not the crappy plastic cartridges that I was used to. He told me he purchased 3 games to go along with it. The first, MLB Baseball. The second, NHL Hockey. I can still remember the startup voice introduction. This was the EA Sports, it's in the game. And the third game he pulled out was something called Tomb Raider. I'm like, what's that about? He said, I'm not sure, but the Sony guy at the store was raving about it. So of course we ended up playing baseball and hockey for like the first week or something, and then one night he's like, I think I'm going to try this Tomb Raider game now. Now I need to pause here and bring this all together. If you weren't around at the time, you need to understand how incredibly revolutionary this game was. Now, for me, as I mentioned, the last games I played were old school. Old school. In the 80s and early 90s, video games did not have the capacity for 3D play. What this means is that every action game you played was viewed two-dimensionally, meaning all the action occurred in front of you going from left to right or right to left. Think of the early Mario Brothers games. It's similar to that. This is what my brain was used to. This is all it knew. So my buddy's booting up this game and we turn it on and jaws dropping to the floor. I couldn't believe my eyes. We could actually control a character and make it move up, down, and side to side. We could not only walk around corners, but we could reposition ourselves and look to see what was on the other side. This was revolutionary. I mean, we take all this stuff for granted now, but this was the game that started it. Yeah, I know we had games like Doom on PC that were before this, but for me, this was my first experience with what we now call open world gaming. It was mind-blowing. From this point on, we were hooked. I have such wonderful memories of us playing this game, and it's carried on to this day, which is why I was really excited to jump into the remastered version. Okay, so what are my initial thoughts? Well, first the pros. Number one, the look of this game is amazing. They've done a great job remastering/restoring the visuals of this game. And they even have a button you can press that reinforces this. On the PS5 controller, you can press the Options button, and this will toggle between the old original graphics and the new refreshed graphics. It really is crazy how this game looked back in '96. Can't believe we played this game like this, and gosh darn it, we liked it. We were happy. This looked just fine to us, but yeah, the update to the visuals is amazing. Number 2, the other huge positive for me is the soundtrack. You immediately notice this when the game starts. They managed to keep all the original sound, and for me, this is another reason why this game was so enjoyable back in the day. I played much of this game at night, and trust me when I say, I was more edge of my seat frightened beyond belief because of the music and soundtrack in this game than anything else. It just works. And to be honest, in all the iterations of this game since, I don't think they ever came close to recreating this vibe. Alright, the last positive point I want to make is kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Let's just say it's a good segue from positive discussions to negative discussion. And this would be the controller. I'm really happy that we can now play this game on a modern day controller. This was my biggest beef when I purchased Tomb Raider 1 on Steam, about 3 years ago now? You couldn't play on the controller. You had to use the keyboard, which for me was a deal breaker. But now, alas, we have that ability. However, this leads me to really the only one negative I found surrounding this game. The controls themselves are broken. Now again, I'm playing on PC, so maybe this isn't a thing on PS5? I don't know. If it isn't, please drop a comment below and let us know. But in the controller menu, you have the option of selecting either tank controls, which are the original controls, and modern controls, which are supposed to be modern. Now, for me, the modern controls work perfectly. They represent what most of us are used to. You can use the 2 joysticks to navigate and look around with ease. However, there are 2 very basic and needed movements you need to perform in this game which the modern controls do not allow you to do. Jumping back is one, and jumping from side to side is the other. For some reason, they just omitted this from the modern controls. So as a result, I'm left playing with the tank controls. And although this is okay, my brain is just not used to how clunky this game was. If you're playing using the tank controls, I would recommend using the arrow keys as your moving controller, much like the PS1 controller was laid out. But even for me, this is very difficult to do because my brain is hardwired in using the joysticks. So even after consciously making an effort to use the arrow keys to move around, after 5 or 10 minutes, I find myself, unknowingly, moving with the joysticks. It's just hard to make that switch. And when you're using tank controls, the joysticks are very finicky when trying to, say, run around a corner. They just don't work. I end up running into a wall or find that the camera lags so far behind that you don't see what's around the corner until it's too late. And sadly, for me, this is a make it or break it proposition when playing this game. There's no way I can enjoy playing this game if I can't even successfully run around a corner. The reality is that the controlling aspect of this game is broken. Now, I'm hoping they'll come out with a patch to fix the modern controls, but until then, I don't really see me playing this game a lot. And that sucks. It's been 28 years and I'm still waiting. Yeah. Alright, so that's it, my friends. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and want to help out, please subscribe, give a thumbs up, and let me know what you think. Are you having as much difficulty with the controllers as I am? Maybe it's just me. Or have you figured out a workaround that maybe I haven't thought of yet? If so, drop a comment below and let everyone know. Until next time, be happy, be safe.